honor. And, you know, when I heard that they're going to be doing this, it was ecstatic because I feel, you know, in the basketball community especially, and or not just the basketball community period, an opportunity to share my experience, or it goes without saying, I think it's an opportunity to learn, and that's how I've done a lot of learning by hearing others speak. And you know, I mean, obviously it's hard not to mention the crazy time it's been. You know, I just got the job in March, and it's been a whirlwind. But what I find is that I'm planning even more than I used to. And, you know, and that's why when I saw the topic of developing a season plan, I jumped all over it. You know, and I'll start with this. I feel planning is the secret to success. I feel the best planners, and, you know, I mean, with that being said, I mean, not everything goes to plan. And I'll definitely touch on that during my presentation, but I think planning is definitely a secret to success. I think the best planners usually do very well and have successful seasons and successful in life. And with that being said, also preparing, like it just prepares you. And I think being prepared going into something as best as possible gives you a better chance to be successful. And once again, it'll be touched on in my presentation, preparing for the worst, as we're kind of learning now. And obviously I'm learning full tilt, and you know, I'm not just planning for one season, I'm planning for 2 seasons here. And it's changed every week, it's changed every day. And you have to be able to adjust and be adaptable to, you know, what you have, and just kind of focus on what you can control, and let's continue planning. So I've broken it down into not too many slides, but a number of slides, just how I kind of visualize it, and, you know, by quarters. But let's start with this. So your yearly planning. So to me, it's your macro, it's your overview, it's your big picture planning. So literally, like, you know, I hear the cliche working backwards, and I'm one of those people. I do work backwards, but the thing with your yearly plan is you can literally, you know, it's like your skeleton. You could take out the calendar and you could just start plotting things in, you know, putting a pen to paper. So you obviously, you know, it's also all the scheduling pieces that you have. This is where you can put it down on paper and, you know, always revert back to it. Also, it's the vision. It's the vision, you know, I mean, we all share visions with our teams, our players. This is your vision. How, if you could paint a picture, this is how you'd want to paint your picture. You know, obviously you have day by day, month by month, and we'll get into all those types of things, but the calendar should be your #1 friend. Okay, I mentioned seasons here. So in basketball, it's, you know, most sports, but it's 4 seasons to me, just like a game, 4 quarters. So obviously you have your preseason, you have your regular season, you have your postseason, and you have your off season. So once again, when you're putting this plan together, you know the dates, you know the times. This, you know, when I break it down, and it allows me to just have a clear picture. And that's what I'm trying to, with a yearly plan, that is what I'm trying to create for myself and for my program. Obviously with academics, it's the same thing. You know when midterms are, you know when the finals are, and you know when your athlete's going to be usually more stressed or not. So once again, this gives you, having that calendar, having that, you know, paint this picture, you definitely got to add in your, you know, the midterms and the finals, because you got to make adjustments. You know, I mean, obviously the game schedule is a game schedule, but you know, it's just the exact same thing. You know when midterms and finals are, paint this in your picture. Recruiting, it's a big one. It's a big one. I mean, once again, in advance, you know when the big time tournaments are, you know when you're going to have time to recruit. Pencil it in, penciling it. Sure, it might change, but once again, it's part of your yearly plan. You have an opportunity to always make sure that these things are, you know, to the forefront. And once again, it's the best thing about it is you're preparing. And for the most part, I mean, as we're learning now, you have to prepare for the worst in most cases. But once again, this paints a picture. So your yearly planning is your macro planning, is your, once again, you're overseeing every month. Your weekly planning. So this is your micro planning. This is you know, I like to think you have you're more in control with this, and you know, it's because you're going maybe day by day, week by week, what month by month. Me personally, I go week by week, and you know, I just literally have a list, and I just, you know, like prioritize and check mark all the boxes, whatever I can finish. And even if you don't finish, it's okay. It's not the end of the world because there's going to be adjustments, right? So I started with your meetings. I think it's instrumental that you meet with your staff. Make sure you're all on the same page, because your players will feed and feel that if you're not there with your staff. So I think meeting with your staff is instrumental. Going over the plan, going over what you want them to do in practice. Maybe they have to go recruit that week, whatever it is. I just believe that you need to have meetings with your staff, meeting with your players. Oh, it's just as big, if not bigger. And you know what? To me, it's like taking temperature. It's you know, if they're stressed, if there's school, like whatever it is, because you know these things happen, and we have to always be sensitive that these guys are student athletes or winter student athletes, and it's tough. There's lots of different stress. So instead of guessing or assuming or maybe hearing from somebody else, I always recommend having meetings with your players individually. You can show them film from the previous week. You can show, like, there's just so much that can be achieved and so many benefits of meeting with your players. Good old practice planning. I mean, once again, just being prepared as much as possible. I'll get into practice planning a little bit more and how, you know, my experience and how I've seen it done and what I think successful. But your practice plan is extremely important, because you're, once again, you're preparing for the game that, you know, for your games, for your exhibition game, doesn't matter. Practice planning is instrumental. You don't want to go in there and just free will it. Your players will notice. You know, we have to give I don't think our people give our players as much due as we should. They're really smart, you know, and at the end of the day, we're a role model. We want to make sure that our planning rubs off on our players, and, you know, we build those habits for them as well. So just building that habit of just being prepared. SC stands for strength and conditioning. And I'll tie in recovery with this. I think it's absolutely, like, it has to be, like, you must have, and I'm not saying it has to be, you know, great, but you must have a very good relationship, or best as you can, with your strength and conditioning, your support staff, your strength and conditioning, your trainers, your academic support. I think it's instrumental that you have a good relationship with them. And I think it ties into your strength and conditioning first and foremost. Obviously, you know, you lift during the week, and you want to have that, you know, that give and take, because you got to trust that person. You got to be able to, you know, they are the expert, and you want to be able to have an open communication on what we should be doing. And I think the better your communication is, the better relationship. I think once it just, you know, it creates that you're on the same plan, and I think it just benefits your players. Recovery. You will hear me say this a lot during my presentation. I think recovery is instrumental as well. I'm using that word a lot, but it's gotta be. It's especially nowadays, we ask our athletes to do a lot. I mean, the days they lift, they have school, they have practice. It's a lot. It's just a lot. So what are we doing for their recovery? Once again, I think that relationship with your training staffs and whoever, it's paramount. Miscellaneous. So I put this in, and this covers a lot of different things. If you have to travel that week, who's taking care of that? You know, if you have you're hosting, your shoot around times, these things, and once again, these are the relationships you need with those people that are in charge of that. But once again, like, those things you got to build into your weekly plan. And I, like, you know, Sunday, Monday, you just got to have it there. And I personally believe, in what I've seen, it works. And it's just, once again, being prepared as possible. I think, once again, it's the secret to success. Okay, let's get into the preseason. So to me, this is your first phase, your first quarter, for it to say it in basketball terms. Preseason's good because you are in control of it for the most part, and I'll get into that a little bit more. But the first thing you want to do is you want to implement your system. You know, some people like to have 10, 15 different things, teach their own. I think, you know, you just have to really want to hammer home, and this is the base, this is the foundation of what your program is going to be built on. Your offense, your defense, your ATO, whatever it may be. But implementing your system, the preseason gives you a lot of time for that. And you want to just, you don't want to be built on quicksand. You want to have a foundation. And these are things you could work on every day. And, for the most part, you don't have games, right? So you get a lot of practice time in, and you don't have that during the, obviously the regular season. With that being said, game ready fitness. So this is your opportunity where you can get your guys into the best shape possible. The offseason, we could touch on that later, but you want your guys to be game ready. Your preseason, you want to simulate their games. You want their win to be there. And there's a lot of different tests you could do. You could do the beep test. Once again, this comes back to having a relationship with, your strength and conditioning people. But this is the opportunity to get them in best shape possible. And I'm a firm believer that, the beep test and all these things are really good. Because it mentally tests them. But I believe the best conditioning is through practice. It's just how I think, just sprinting up and down, hey, there's benefits to it, but I'd rather have them dribbling a basketball, in all honesty, up and down the court, maybe do more transition, maybe do more, you can do more contact drills, but end of the day, you just want them to get to the best shape possible. Your resources, this always plays a part. Once again, whether it's university, coaching pros, it's part of it. You have to maximize your resources. You can only do what you could afford. Let's just be honest. And and it's time. Also, it's time availability. It's because you have to be sensitive what's going around you, and that's why I touched on the school schedule, because you don't want to book more than you could handle, and you don't want to take a flight all the way across the country if it's going to sacrifice guys' school and so forth. So your resources always play a part. And I just believe in maximizing it as much as possible, however you can. And this is, once again, a relationship that you have with a relationship and conversation you have with your AD, and, you maximize it and you fundraise towards it, and to make the most of it. What I do like about the preseason is you're in control of the exhibition schedule. You get to choose. If you want to play in this tournament, you want to play this game, want to play this team. I think that there's great benefit in that. And with that being said, with the school schedule, usually midterms is kind of around the same time, and you have to be very, mindful of that. But you can pick. You want to play one game? Do you want to play two games? Do you want to play a weekend of games? Whatever simulates your season, your regular season, I believe you should try to mirror your exhibition schedule towards that. The unique part is, most of the times I believe you should play non-conference. Maybe play potentially a opponent that you might see in the end. But the unique part is you get to control the preseason schedule. Let's get into our regular season. So practice planning. Once again, it's preparation. It's preparation. I truly believe this is the opportunity to really hammer home what you want to achieve this week. And you have to ask yourself, what do you want to achieve this week? And then, when you have your meetings with your staff and you're gearing for the games, you're preparing for the game. So practice planning, and I'll get into a little bit more. It's in the regular season, it's different than your preseason because you have the games and it's longer. This is your second quarter, pretty much your third quarter in a sense. And then obviously you have two halves. So practice planning becomes very, very important to how you strategize each week in order to be ready for your games. Scouting. This is, I used to do this a lot, being an assistant coach. Scouting, you get to know your opponent. And I think that's if you go back to when you're doing your macro and your yearly, you know who you're going to play. So I think that's an opportunity to best prepare for your opponents. If we're playing Friday, I don't believe in I personally, I know a team pretty well from their preseason and just looking at the roster and whatnot, who's coming in, who's coming out. But scouting allows you to know your opponent, and obviously you can know your opponent as much as you want, but your team has to know, and your strengths and their weaknesses, and you have to get through that. Tapering and intensity levels. Yeah, how you practice Monday, it can't be how you practice Thursday. You'll have no juice left for the game. So you have to, and I believe you taper. You might practice 2 hours on Monday. It might be 2 hours on Tuesday, but then it might just be an hour and a half or an hour 15 on Wednesday. It may be more transition on Monday and Tuesday. It may be less on Wednesday and Thursday. See their legs a bit, maybe more contact Monday, less contact Wednesday, whatever it may have you. Once again, it's just all to prepare for your athletes. You want them as fresh as possible for the game. So I'm very mindful of tapering down each day, just in order to be prepared for your games. Recovery, once again, recovery starts the minute that clock hits zero. What are you doing for your athletes? Are you having food? It's all got to be planned. It's all got to be planned, and especially, in youth sports, we play back-to-backs. It's tough. It's extremely tough. So, especially if you're on the road, you got to get on the bus. You got to have a plan. You got to plan your recovery. I think your recovery is just as important. And, one thing I've learned is, especially playing back-to-back, maybe Friday and Saturday and, Sunday, they have the day off and they got to get back on top of school and stuff. If you can practice late Mondays, it gives you more recovery time. Because it's a tough thing. It's mentally draining, and it's just many I'm sure could relate. But that part of the recovery, it's got to be planned for. Adjustments. It's huge. And the number one thing I'm always thinking about when I talk about adjustments is injuries. How do we prepare for that? It's all different. Some people, have luxury of having a deeper team, having, whatever it may have you. But this is where recovery comes in. I think a way to avoid injuries is by having, winning the recovery game, is to taper your intensity levels. And just, you're going to face them. It's part of the game. And it's something that you can't let it derail your season. And the best you could plan or prepare for it, the better off. And I think the less injuries you'll have. Okay, wanted to touch on the postseason. So this is let's say your third quarter. Maximizing, and some people will say peaking. How do we peak? I've asked myself so many times, and I've had discussion with different coaches. How do we maximize, and how do we peak at the right time in the postseason? We all want to be playing our best in the postseason. Once again, I think this is where recovery comes in. Winning that game, I think this is where tapering comes in. And to me, personally, to maximize in the postseason, I think the freshest team wins. The team that's less injured, better conditioned, team that takes care of recovery the best, fresher legs win. And, that's something you got to plan for, and you got to really, as much as you control, take advantage of it. It's tough, and, you don't want to maximize too early, but at the same time, it's what you do in the season that gets you to this point, and it will reflect in the postseason. Obviously, finishing the academic year, think about it. They've had a long season. They have had, different things happen. They may have had injuries. They may a key player got injured. Their role changed. We have to, this is where basketball to me doesn't become as important. We want them to put them in a position to finish their academic year as strong as possible. Personally, I've seen the gym being open optional. You give it an optional workout, and maybe you're not even there, and just maybe that's how they de-stress. But at the same time, it's student athlete for a reason, and we want the best for them. And we have to really be mindful that, they take care of school. They're able to go see their tutors. They're able to see their academic advisors more. Basketball just becomes very secondary unless they want to get in the gym, and that's a stressor. Staying on postseason, this kind of getting into the offseason, it's evaluating the numbers. We constantly evaluate. We evaluate players every time, all day, every day. We evaluate our practices. We evaluate ourselves after games. But at the end, this is where you really, really see where you stand. Whether you're sixth in the league at rebounding, like, with this being said, you get to really, really see where you stand. And this helps you plan for the next season. And you know what? It's all reality. Numbers do not lie. They really, really don't. And they give you an opportunity, and it helps you reflect and just see where you stand and where you got to get better and where you did well. Because and then you want to measure yourself obviously to the top in the league, and that's where you set your goal, and you start new planning, and you start planning for the off season right then and there. Now we get into our off season. So the off season is interesting because there's no school. So unless they're doing summer school, but that makes more time for them to do things and get better. So the first thing, once again, strength and conditioning is that physical transformation. I think this is the area and this is the time where, and I'll say this, like, your strength and conditioning coach earns their check. And for me personally, unless I've personally done it with them, I get out the way and let them, we make a plan and let them be best friends with their strength and conditioning trainers. This is where I think physically they could make major leaps. They're working out more, once again, with no school, and they could just put like 100% into it. In the season, there's so many challenges with school and this and that, and off season, I think this is where they really can improve. And then with that being said, the individual plans. I believe this is, in the summer, this is where we really focus, we focus on them one by one. Like a plan for a fourth year guy is not going to be the same plan for a first or second year guy. And, I always say, like, your first and second year and you're kind of like your fifth year guys, they're usually desperate. They want to prove themselves. The fifth year guy wants to finish as best as he can. It's your third and fourth years that I feel you really have to keep motivated. And the way it's like that individual plan. You're not doing as many team stuff. So I think you really got to have a meeting with your players and be like, once again, the numbers do not lie. Here's where we need you to get better. I remember, it's just touching my leg. I remember a coach telling me, oh, you got to put on 20 pounds of muscle. Sure. Okay, cool. But it's how do we go about it? We have to have a plan. That's conversation you have with your strength and conditioning coaches. You have with your whoever it is. You have to have a plan so they know where they're going. There's targets. They can monitor how they're getting better, where they need to get better and improve. But the offseason, I think those are the two things that really and can set you apart from other programs that may not be doing as much or even care about it. But I think planning and preparing for that in terms of that physical transformation and having an individual plan for them where they need to get better with numbers, supporting this and, just getting them to where they want to be, especially those first and second years and your third and fourth years. I mean, it's a different conversation for the most part because they get a little bit comfortable, but this is where talking about being a better leader and getting better this way and that way and whatever aspirations they have of maybe playing at the next level. So
Jermaine, I'm just going to jump in here. We do have a couple questions that relate to that last one specifically. So the first one, how do you balance your yearly plans with the strength and conditioning plans, and what if both plans don't align? So that's question one.
So yearly plan align with the strength and conditioning plan?
How do you balance your yearly plan and strength and conditioning, and what happens if they don't align?
Okay. Well, once again, I mean, your yearly plan in terms of strength and conditioning, that's something I feel you have to be on the same page with your strength and conditioning coach. I find it's very, how can I put it? It's very critical that, yes, you're on the same page and you see that in the same, like, you just have to understand the different times of year. I believe in the preseason, you're working out more because you're playing less games. Regular season, you're working out less because and, you know, some people might call it a maintenance phase and you do more recovery. That might be it. So I think it really depends on the time of year, and you have to plan that and sit down with your strength and conditioning coach. And that has to be, you have to be on the same page with that. And once again, you know, it all depends on the time of year. If it doesn't align, I mean, if someone gets injured and they can't do that, you got to modify. I mean, once again, I talked about adjusting. I think you really have to be adaptable and you have to adjust and what's best for the program and your players. You know, I mean, there's times that, you know, a guy might miss a workout for an exam or whatever. You have to adjust. And then that's something that comes back down to the communication and the plan you might have started out in the beginning with your strength and conditioning coach.
Okay. Next question. Do you involve your players in the individual plans? And have you run into issues where the players don't align, the players' plan don't align with yours?
Yeah, it's interesting. Definitely. I am a guy where, you know, and I got this, we really did a lot of this at Queens. You know, individual planning has its challenges for sure. Once again, I think this is where the numbers support a lot of where you think they need to go. And you know what? I mean, from my experience, what players love are NBA comparisons, are pro comparisons. So, I mean, you know, the beauty of the internet nowadays, it's, you know, like I will give them an NBA comparison and I will go look at their pre-draft numbers, for instance. And I will go be like, here's what they did at their point in their career in school. So I think dangling the carrot a little bit, giving them a pro comparison or someone that they look up to or maybe they pattern their game after. I think that, I mean, and you can't get out of the hand. You can't say, oh, here's what LeBron James was doing. No. I mean, we're not talking legends here. We're not putting any legends. We're putting, you know, there's clarity. And if they don't agree with it, once again, I think the numbers support it. And they have to understand, I mean, in the end, you want what's best for them. And you're saying, this is what's going to help you play next year or not. I think it's just it's that simple.
Okay, a couple more keep rolling in, so we'll stay on these, and then you can wrap up following the next couple here. First
Okay.
one, do you have any tips for mental recovery considering the length of the season and life circumstances?
Mental recovery. Yeah, I mean, we all need some mental recovery sometimes. Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I think, you know, I've been keeping up more to date with it and studied it more. I believe sleep is one of the best things of recovery. And, you know, once again, I learned this with working with my former colleague is most people acquire sleep debt. And by the end of the week, if you have 6 hours of sleep debt, it really affects your mental state. I also recommend, you know, if you have a sports doctor, sports psychiatrist, like these are the resources that I believe most schools offer. And I think you really have to have a relationship with them and promote it to your players. And these are once again, it comes back to your individual meetings. And if you take their temperature, if they're struggling with school and life's so hard, this is where you reach out and you go within the department and find out, you know, how can we best serve our athletes? So I think that those relationships and, you know, I look at sleep and I look at, you know, they're eating right. I mean, and just end of the day, them knowing that you're very mindful of their well-being is instrumental.
Okay, next one. How do you go about with the scouting aspect for teams that play at a lower level like high school when resources are scarce?
Yeah, that's challenging. There's no questions. You know, so I mean, it's funny because in the preseason too, you might play a team that hasn't played yet, or resources are limited. I mean, me personally, this is where having a good network, you know, maybe knowing a coach that plays them in that division, you reach out to them and, you know, let them know that you could always reciprocate in any way you can. But definitely from my personal experience, yeah, it's been my network and, you know, asking and find it, because yeah, if there's no tape available, there's no tape available. It makes it tough, but maybe your players know. I've asked my players before, it's a lower level, but do you know this kid? Have you heard about them? Have you this, that? So I think really having a network and using it, and knowing that you'll reciprocate as best as you can, I think and building those kind of relationships really, 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 really go a long way.
Okay, last one before you move on. How do you shift your season planning from university to when you're coaching a shorter season, like a high school or club season?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, you still got to plan and prepare, because for the most part who you're playing, when you're playing. Yeah, it has its challenges. I know the resources could be limited, but once again, I think you focus on what you can control. You practice plan as much as possible. Once again, when your postseason is. You want to be fresh. You want to be maximizing yourself in those situations. So I believe that's where planning comes in once again. And I deal with a shorter season now with my CEBL, and yeah, I'm just more mindful of from the beginning. Now I'm just tapering practice way more than I would in the regular season. In the university season, you have two halves. So at the same time, first half, we can get this done and that done, but we're more preparing for the second half. If it's just a 1/2 season, then you really have to be mindful and prepare as best as you can for, being ready for your postseason. And just, once again, your practice plan, your tapering, your recovery, you just have to be very much more mindful of it and plan for it a little bit more, do things a little bit more earlier than later.
Okay, that's all the questions for now. So if you want to continue with your presentation.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I wanted to touch, and once again, planning, there's lots of benefits, but I want to touch from, I want to share my experience. And as you can see the slide, it's funny, as I've been coaching a while now, you see what works and what doesn't work. And, and the first thing is the benefits of planning. Some of our best seasons I've been a part of were the best planned. And the major benefits to it, once again, is just being prepared. I think the better you prepare, the better season you will have. And, and once again, not just preparing, because, let's be honest, the plan is not going to go exactly how it was, laid out. It's just not how it works. Preparing for the worst, preparing for, the injuries, COVID, as we're seeing. It's different things. But the more you're prepared, I think the better, the more you're going to get out of that season. And, and once again, I think it's a secret to success. I really think that it's a controllable thing. And when you plan, you just really you have that vision, you have your skeleton, your foundation. I really just believe going and just knocking things out, checking all those boxes. I think it just really sets yourself up to be successful. I've reflect and evaluate, and I've been guilty of this, not reflecting and evaluating myself enough. And once again, we constantly evaluate, and we evaluate players all the time, practices, after games, we evaluate. But when do we take time to really sit down and reflect and evaluate ourselves and where we can get better? And this is where, I've done some professional development. I've been to coaching clinics. I've spoken to my mentors about what I've done better. But I think, with two halves, you could do this in December when they're focusing on their schoolwork and whatnot and exams. But I think, and once again, I've been guilty of this. I haven't reflected and evaluated myself enough. And I think because we just get caught up in evaluating everything else, and sometimes it's just a lot of things that we don't control. So I think especially in the end, you really have to sit down and reflect and evaluate yourself. And how do I get better? Because this is not just about your players getting better. You have to sit down and how do I get better? Athletes experience. This is one of the big ones to me. I mean, and because we are, as coaches, we are role models. We're in a relationship business. And me personally, I want to help prepare my athlete for the best future they could have, and I want them to have a memorable experiences, because in the end, I mean, they're probably going to remember some of the meetings we've had, and I mean, more than tough losses or great wins. I mean, these relationships, I mean, great relationships don't fade. And I mean, with being a role model, and some of these guys want to be future coaches and whatnot. So to me, that's when I always reflect. I always look at that, like, are they having the best experience possible? And to me, that is, it just, those relationships, and I've been fortunate enough I've been to some of my, former players' weddings. And to me, that means way more than winning a game that maybe happened 10 years ago. Like, in the end, that's not why I'm in this. And, once again, we're role models, and we're in a relationship business. So I always reflect on that, and, talk with my players and laugh with them, especially. Okay, so in recovery, you've heard me talk about it quite a few times. I think after planning, I think recovery is a close second to successful season. Having a successful season, I should say. It's controllable for the most part. Once again, I think it helps you be the freshest you could be at when it counts in the postseason, especially. I believe that it's something that it's a separator. I think a lot of I teams don't, they go, and they want to go hard all the time. And I think that recovery gets lost. I think personally it's a separator. And, these are all these little things that help you separate, and you wonder why teams are great and why some teams are average. And I think besides planning, recovery is one of the ones that you should try to dominate and win. And lastly, COVID-19 contingency planning. Wow, I mean, who's not? Anyone I speak to is contingency planning, because the uncertainty of everything that's going on. My first thing, as this is going on, is to keep my athletes completely engaged. We have Zoom meetings. And I just want to, once again, check their temperature, make sure guys still are engaged, make sure they're informed of what's going on, make sure I know what's going on with them. I mean, you got to be able to keep your athletes engaged. And for the most part, I'm completely transparent with them, because I don't want them to be, down or like thinking the worst, But you have to know, they have to know, like, listen, it's changing. It's continually changing. The plans are continually changing, and it's contingency planning. It is what it is. And this is, and then as I look at it further, like, I'm using this year as an example. You might have to make a custom schedule where you're just playing exhibition games. But this is what keeps your athletes engaged. And the most important thing with this is the communication part. And I've literally seen every day, and the amount of meetings and emails that I've been dealing with the CBL, and it looks, finally, I can say with a smile, that it looks like we're going to play next very, very soon. And it's made hope turn into reality. And I can't give enough credit for the CBL, to the CBL offices, and who's doing what, but it's been all contingency plans, and it's changing literally daily, weekly. And this is why I think planning, you have to be really mindful, and you have to be open to adapting, adjusting, and communicating as best as you can. Because right now, as we all know, there's lots of uncertainty, and we're all preying on hope here instead of doing things by design, which we're so used to with planning. But yeah, I mean, it's challenging times, but you have to really know how to be, customize a schedule. You have to think outside the box here to really make sure that you do the best as you can, and your players know that you're doing the best you can to make sure you have something to look forward to. And here we go. I mean, I'm open to any question. Once again, I'm grateful for the opportunity to have, to share. And once again, I've been lucky now to see, it's been 10 years of coaching, seen what's worked and what's not worked, and what may work for me may not work for the other person. But this is where I think it's just a great opportunity to share, and, even at the different levels. Because in the end of, to go with that athlete experience is, we want to, I talk about preparing our guys for the future, but we want to prepare our athletes for the next level. So whether they're in middle school, you're preparing them for high school. High school, you're preparing them to be a university player. University, I'm preparing them to be pros. And, those are some of the best athletes to work with, the ones that want to play at the next level. And I just think that, planning is the number one benefit. That's the benefit of it. You have a plan. You have a vision, and to share that vision, I think, instills a lot of confidence in your athlete.
Okay, Jermaine, we got a few questions here.
Sure.
How much variation do you have in your practice planning day to day, and how does it change in different parts of your season, exhibition, league, playoffs, etc.?
Variation. Yeah, I mean, once again, they're adjusting. Especially in the regular season, when you know your opponent and your opponent is great in transition, that week we will work on transition defense more. Especially on the Monday and Tuesday, the beginning of the week, when you have more legs and you practice a little bit longer. But once again, you got to know your opponent. And, if you're playing a pressing team, we will work on press break more than a week that we play an opponent that they don't press. So I think you really have to, I think knowing your opponent is paramount, and it just helps you practice plan better and just prepare for what you're going to see in the week.
Okay. How much of your plan do you share with your athletes? And if you do, how do you do it?
Okay. So that's a good question. I believe in, having a team. And once again, this goes back to the meetings. Having your weekly meetings, you have it with your staff. So, your staff, but when you have those, because I believe that you do video with your team. Obviously when you're scouting, you want to share what, teams, personnel and whatnot, but you let them know at the beginning of the week, this is the plan. This is, and you have discussion, because Monday you're evaluating yourself. Like, how do we play in the weekend? And, you want to, I don't believe that you just have it, your dictatorship. You just have, some of the best programs or teams I've been a part of has been player led, especially with your captains. If your captains and your leadership is strong, the rest will follow. And I firmly believe that. So, when you have those individual meetings with your captains, be like, you ask some questions, where do we think we could be better, or what really worked, going forward. And I think you toss that in your plan. Maybe we need to shoot more. If your players say, coach, I think we should shoot more, I think, you tell them, yeah, we could shoot more in practice, but at the same time, when the gym's open, make sure you're there shooting as well. So I think you definitely have to take the temperature of your athlete and get feedback from them, because at the end of the day, I've heard it many times now, the coaches, we lose the game, the players win the game, then the players are the one playing, right? So that's my take on it.
Okay. Student athletes sometimes have a tough time balancing athletics and academics. Do you spend time with them building their own day-to-day plans?
Yeah, I think especially with your first and guys that are struggling, because it's such a big transition. Personally, we have mandatory study hall for the freshmen, especially because you want to really know what's going on and monitor where they're struggling, and it just be, once again, their transition is going to be it's huge. It's a big transition. So yeah, once again, these individual meetings. You could really dig into what's going on. And, for me personally, and I've seen it being done, we get everybody's class schedule, and you could see where there's gaps and holes to meet, and where they, say, hey, this is where you should be studying, or this is where we could do our study hall, and, oh, this is where your exam is. So, this week you maybe have this practice off. And we can't, it's hard not to be, selfish in a sense where you want them, if they miss a practice, oh man, they're not as prepared, for the scout. And I understand that. But, you know, if they're struggling off the court, usually it affects them on the court. So I think sitting down and individually planning around not just the basketball, but their schoolwork, absolutely. I think it just goes such a long way. And I think most athletes appreciate that, and, you know, having that opportunity just to share that information with you.
Sorry.
Of course.
What are your thoughts on CEBL adopting the LAM ending?
ELAM ending. Oh, yeah.
And does your prep change leading into the CBL Summer Series?
Yeah, I mean, ELAM ending. So I've been watching TBT lately, and you know, I hope some of my CBL counterparts are not watching this, because I like it. You know what? Entertainment value. I see the benefits of it. From a coaching perspective, I'll say I do not. It's not a favorite of mine right now. And I'll say this right now, like I don't know tons about it. I've just been watching on TBT. And the reason I'm not a fan of it, because the biggest thing to me is time. Basketball is about time and score. And, you know, and I was watching, and I'm just looking at, you know, guys take some threes that they're not supposed to be taking. It's just because they're trying to hit the target score. And you know, I mean, once again, what does that do with the rules? And, you know, I mean, once again, I think there's, you know, pros and cons to everything. I don't know enough to say, you know, but right now I'm not a fan of it. I see the entertainment benefits, no question. But I mean, I think as soon as I get to learn more about it, which I have to strategize, there's no question with the CBL that I have to strategize for it, because I'm anticipating games will be close. So I'm researching it. And in terms of CBL schedule, I mean, yeah, it's tough. We're going to have, I mean, right now we have, you know, once we get through after testing and making sure everything's healthy and we're safe, we're going to we have a training camp. We have a 7-day training camp. My main thing is we're bringing back our core group back. We have 7 returning players. So I'm very thankful for that. And that's something that I made a priority. But yeah, I mean, my biggest thing in the training camp is going to be, let's get our conditioning up and let's just build our chemistry. So does that mean, do I put in a bunch of new stuff? No, absolutely not. We can adjust as we go. But do we implement our style of play and our system? Absolutely. And that's the great thing about having 7 guys returning, that they could teach the new guys, not just myself. And yeah, with that being said, we have training camp for 7 days, and then we got 6 games in about 9-10 days, 2 back-to-back. So that's where recovery is going to be instrumental. And then, you know, a team gets eliminated, and then we get right into the playoffs. So it's not a typical season, because it's a sprint. It's a sprint, and you want to, you know, maximize at the right time. And once again, I can't say it enough, but I think the healthiest, most cohesive team will be the champ. And that's what I'm focused on.
Okay, couple more still. Are there any documents you can share with your plans and maybe go through the process of creating a plan? And what do you think the most important pieces to those documents?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I could speak about these kind of things for a long time. And, you know, and I do it, you know, because once again, I've had the opportunity and the pleasure of working with different coaches, especially I was an assistant for quite a while. So even being a head coach, this is, you know, fairly new to me, and I've had great mentors. Yeah, I could definitely share what I think works and doesn't work, and I've seen it. And I'm an email away. Pretty much Jermaine.small at Lethbridge. I mean, you can find me on the internet, but you could definitely email me, and I could email you back, and we could definitely have that discussion. And sorry, what was the second question, Ian? Importance of sorry, go ahead.
What do you think the most important pieces to those documents are?
With the plan, definitely having a vision. And once again, being prepared as much as possible. I believe that is the key. And you know, and then the next two, I would, once again, I can't say enough, is recovery, planning to recover and dominating and winning that, and being able to adjust and adapt. Once again, you lay out your plan and you have it month by month, but you know there's adjustments coming, and you know you're gonna have to have contingency plans as we're learning full tilt right now, and just being able to, like, you know, I mean, if there's injuries, you have to have something in place for if this happens or that happens. So I would definitely say, you know, being prepared, definitely focus on that. I mean, your recovery, your you know, those pieces are just the most important pieces of your weekly plan. Your micro planning is huge because you have more control over that. And I think that those are the biggest pieces.
Okay, one last question in there so far.
Sure.
How much has COVID affected the recruiting aspect coming in as a new head coach?
Oh yeah, it's been interesting. It's funny, and I'll just share this. I literally met a recruit coming in for the first time 3 weeks ago. He committed to me. He was my first. See, I wonder if he's watching this because we both laugh about it. He was my first, and he was, you know, he reached out to me, and we just text for like every day for like a week or two, and you know, we just grew like a relationship very quickly, and I felt like I'd known him a lot longer. Just the questions he was asking me, and I literally met him for the first time 3 weeks ago. So how have I been doing it? Yeah, I mean, there's highlight tapes, it's a highlight tape, so it's gonna make everybody look good. But I do my due diligence. I call high school coaches, I call AU coaches, I call strength and conditioning coaches. I call them all, and you know, I get feedback. I do my reference checks. Obviously, you speak to parents. Parents, it's huge, and what they foresee for their parent, and I mean for their player, their son. But yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways. I mean, I even look at their social media, in all honesty, and if I see things that they're posting at 2 a.m., things that I don't want to have to face when they're programmed, like I don't like that. I don't take a liking to it, so I stop recruiting them. And that's the thing. With that being said, like, you know, there's always a question: talent versus fit. And I'm definitely more looking for fit. And yeah, I mean, you have your standards, and do they check the boxes or not? And I have to give a lot of credit to, you know, my assistant coaches. They've done a great job digging up a lot for me. And you know, and once again, I'm lucky and fortunate enough to have a pretty good network where I can call a person that knows this person, or that knows this person, or that person, and it's been very helpful. So that's how I've been recruiting, and it's been a process, and I'll never forget it.
Okay, that's all the questions we've received so far. I just wanted to mention that Jermaine's email is jermaine.small@ulef.ca if you're looking to follow up with some of the season planning. I think we're good, Jermaine, so thank you very much for your presentation tonight. Next week, we will have Pronghorn women's soccer coach Ilse Wong presenting effective communication with athletes. So thank you again, everybody, for coming out, and we look forward to next week with Ilse Wong.